The specialists say I'll never walk again. But sometimes I dream I'm running through fields I've never seen. And when I wake up, the loss feels new all over again. Celestia Harrington's voice barely rose above the autumn wind rustling through the estate gardens. At 25, she sat in her wheelchair beneath an oak tree, her fingers tracing patterns on the armrests, a nervous habit she'd developed in the 2 years since the accident. Her father, Preston Harrington, CEO of Harrington Luxury Developments, stood behind her, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder, his own grief still raw from losing his wife to cancer 3 years prior. "Miss Harrington?" A man's voice, unfamiliar and gentle, interrupted the silence. "I'm Wilder Kane. Your father hired me to manage the estate orchards." Celestia turned to see a man in his early 30s, work-worn hands holding a basket of apples, his face weathered by sun and honest labor. Something in his eyes, a depth of understanding that transcended pity, made her pause. "The orchards have been neglected for years," she said, her tone sharper than intended. "Why start now?" Wilder set down the basket and knelt to her eye level, a gesture that felt respectful rather than condescending. "Because your father mentioned you used to love walking through them before the accident. He thought maybe bringing them back to life might bring something back to life in you, too." Celestia's throat tightened. The fall had happened during a site inspection of her father's latest luxury tower. A loose safety railing, an 8-foot drop, a fractured spine, and surgery that saved her life but took her legs. She'd been her father's right hand, ambitious and driven, planning to revolutionize sustainable luxury construction. Now she felt like a ghost haunting her own existence. "Noble intention," she whispered. "Wasted effort." Wilder didn't argue. He simply said, "I lost both my parents in a farming accident when I was 19. Spent years thinking I was cursed to watch everything I loved disappear. Then my younger sister, Meadow, reminded me that giving up on living dishonors what we've survived. Sometimes we need someone to show us we're stronger than our grief believes." Over the following weeks, Wilder worked tirelessly on the orchards. Celestia found herself wielding to the gardens daily, watching him prune dead branches, enrich soil, plant new saplings. He talked to her about his sister, who was studying agricultural science on a scholarship he funded by working 3 jobs. He spoke of his parents' farm, lost to debt after their deaths, and how he'd promised himself he'd never stop growing things, even if he no longer owned land. "Why do you care so much about plants?" Celestia asked one afternoon, sunlight filtering through recovering branches. "Because they teach us something essential," Wilder replied, his hands gentle on a young tree. "When a tree is damaged, storm, disease, human carelessness, it doesn't give up. It adapts, sends out new growth in unexpected directions. Sometimes the most beautiful branches come from the deepest wounds. They're not the same as they were, but they're still magnificent, still alive, still reaching toward light." Celestia felt tears building. "I'm not a tree, Wilder." "No," he agreed softly. "You're human, which means you're even more capable of transformation. But you have to want it. You have to believe you're worth the effort of healing, even when healing doesn't look like returning to who you were before." That evening, Celestia confided something she told no one else. "My mother died of cancer when I was 22. I watched her fight so hard to stay alive, to have just one more day. And here I am, alive, with resources and opportunities she'd have treasured, and I'm wasting it all, feeling sorry for myself. I'm ashamed, Wilder. I'm so ashamed." Wilder sat on the ground beside her wheelchair, his voice thick with emotion. "Your mother fought to live because she loved you. Punishing yourself doesn't honor that love. It dismisses the gift she gave you. Living fully, whatever that means now, is how you honor her. And Celestia, living doesn't require walking. It requires being present, being open, being willing to find meaning in this moment, exactly as it is." The next day, Wilder approached Preston Harrington with an unusual request. "Sir, I've been researching adaptive physical therapy techniques my sister learned about in her studies. There's a program combining traditional PT with something called proprioceptive re-education, teaching the body to remember movement patterns through gentle assisted exercise. It's not about walking again necessarily, but about reconnecting with her physical self, rebuilding strength and confidence. With your permission, I'd like to help her try. Preston studied the farmer carefully. You have no medical training. No, sir, but I understand growth. I understand patience. I understand that sometimes the most sophisticated solution isn't better than simple, consistent care from someone who believes in the possibility of change. Wilder met his gaze steadily. I'm not promising miracles. I'm promising I'll show up every day and help your daughter remember she's more than what was taken from her. Preston's eyes glistened. Why would you do this? Because when my parents died, strangers showed up and helped me keep our farm running for 6 months until I could manage alone. They didn't have to. They just did, because kindness was the only currency that mattered when everything else had failed. Your daughter is suffering not from her disability, but from lost hope. That's something I know how to tend. When Wilder proposed the idea to Celestia, she initially refused. I've had the best therapist money can buy. What could you possibly offer that they couldn't? Belief, Wilder said simply. They see a patient with spinal injury. I see Celestia, a woman who survived tragedy, who carries grief with grace, who's forgotten she's extraordinary. Let me try, not to make you walk, but to help you reconnect with your strength. If it doesn't work, you've lost nothing. But if it does, maybe you'll find something you didn't know you were missing. The sessions began in the garden, gentle stretches and movements, Wilder's calloused hands supporting her with surprising tenderness. He talked while they worked, about his parents' belief that land responds to love, about Meadows' determination to revolutionize small farm sustainability, about his dream of someday owning a small orchard where he could teach at-risk youth that growth is always possible. You're describing my mother, Celestia said during one session. She believed in impossible transformations too. Said that's what construction is, taking raw materials and building something that changes lives. Now, I can't even visit sites safely. Who says? Wilder challenged. Your mind is sharper than ever. Your vision hasn't diminished. The how has changed, not the what or why. Maybe you're meant to revolutionize not just construction, but how we think about accessibility and inclusion in that industry. The idea took root slowly, like Wilder's trees. Celestia began consulting remotely on her father's projects, pushing for universal design principles. She started a foundation funding accessible construction training programs. And in the garden with Wilder, something deeper was growing. Not romance, but profound respect and understanding between two people who'd survived loss and found purpose in helping others. 6 months into their sessions, something unexpected happened. During a routine stretch, Celestia felt a tingling in her left foot, sensation where there'd been numbness. The neurologist explained that while her injury was severe, the body's capacity for adaptation could sometimes create new neural pathways. The years of giving up had prevented this. Wilder's patient work had created conditions for healing. I might regain some function, Celestia told Wilder, tears streaming. Not full mobility, maybe never walking independently, but something, more than nothing. Wilder's own eyes filled. Celestia, even if nothing had changed physically, everything has changed. You've come back to life. That was always the goal. The rest is just beautiful bonus. Let me try, she whispered, echoing his first offer. Let me try standing, just for a moment. With Wilder's support and her father watching from the house with his heart in his throat, Celestia bore weight on her legs for the first time in 2 years. She didn't walk, couldn't yet, might never fully, but she stood, trembling and triumphant, held upright by a poor farmer who'd given her something no amount of money could buy: belief in her own worth.
Beyond physical ability.
The specialist said I'd never walk again, Celestia said, her voice now full of wonder. And maybe they're right in the way they meant it.
But Wilder, because of you, I'm learning to stand. Not just physically, but in every way that matters. I'm learning that strength isn't about doing everything alone. It's about accepting help with grace. About building new versions of ourselves from the fragments of who we were. You taught me too, Wilder replied, that kindness isn't about having resources. It's about offering whatever we can, time, belief, presence. You've helped me see that my dreams aren't small just because they don't involve empires. They're meaningful because they're mine, pursued with integrity. Preston watched his daughter and the farmer who'd helped her heal, understanding that sometimes the greatest gift we can give isn't protection from pain, but companionship through it. He'd spent 2 years trying to fix Celestia, when what she'd needed was someone to accept her exactly as she was, while believing she could still grow. The orchards are beautiful now, Celestia observed, looking at trees heavy with fruit. You brought something dead back to life. We brought each other back, Wilder corrected. That's what happens when kindness meets need with genuine care. Miracles aren't sudden transformations. They're the accumulated effect of showing up day after day, believing in possibility even when evidence suggests otherwise. As autumn deepened and harvested apples filled baskets throughout the estate, Celestia stood again, this time with less support, her legs remembering strength they'd been told to forget. She might never run through those fields from her dreams, but she was learning to move through the world in new ways, ways that honored both her limitations and her limitless capacity for resilience. True kindness recognizes that healing isn't about returning to what was, but about courageously creating what can be. When we offer others belief in their worth, when we show up with patience and genuine care, when we see past disability or grief to the complete human beneath, we don't just change individual lives, we transform our understanding of what it means to be whole. The most profound gift we can give is helping others remember they're not defined by what they've lost, but illuminated by how they choose to continue growing toward the light. The most profound gift we can give is helping others remember they're not defined by what they've lost, but illuminated by how they choose to continue growing toward the light.